Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Spotlight. There's been a lot that's happened, some of which you won't see right away, some of which has already happened. We released 2 episodes of Deep News on FARSIGHT'S.com, and one is on the drones by Intisam, and that is a really definitive session. You got to see that one. It really is as definitive as you can get of what those drones were and where they came from and the whole thing. Anyway, that's out at FARSIGHT'S.com. And also, we just released today, thank goodness for Aziz to come in and help to make sure it came out on time, is something that's on the news a lot. It's our first in our series on Vladimir Putin and the war on Ukraine. So the issue with the war in Ukraine is that everyone in the whole world is wondering what's in his head, what's in Putin's head, what does he want? Does he just want Donbass? Does he want all of Ukraine? What is going on? How is he willing to go into all of Europe and have, battle it out there? So that's what this is all about. So Ukraine, so it's Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine, and we have 4 episodes for that. And the first one was just released today, and it's really great. And that's with Shantae. So we really want to encourage everybody to go to FARSIGHT'S.com and watch that. That's going to be like huge. Okay, let me tell you a bit of an insight as to why I've been going to sleep at 7 o'clock in the morning almost every day and what we're doing here. As you know, we've been doing a lot with regard to transcripts with all of our mysteries projects, and so that people can go into all of our past projects, which is way over 100 of them, and talk about them with your AI to get sort of what ideas of the major impact. And so we put up all those transcripts, and we did the same thing with the ET board meetings. And we are now doing it with the conversations with Harvey as well. And the whole idea behind that, all that transcript, is to get our audience to be engaged with all of these things that we've been doing, not just say, what have you done for me lately, what came out this week, but rather for people to get to dive deep into it with your own, deeply conversant librarian, your ET, your AI, telling you everything that's important to look for. And then so when you go and you watch it, the big difference between what we do and what anybody else does in the mainstream news is what we do is real. And we show you the raw data, all collected under totally blind conditions, whereas everything else in all major media says they have a bias going in, and they tell you what their bias is. And they start the news show with the bias, and they end the news show with the bias, and their goal is to convince you. So they're not telling you what's going on. They're just trying to convince you of their side of it, and they're using the news as a vehicle to convince you to be followers that are loyal. And it's not working. It's working terribly. If you look at CNN and even BBC now, their subscriber lists are. CNN is plummeting. They're really desperate. Almost every week there's a new thing they're trying to do to get people to sign up for this or sign up for that. It's almost becoming it's a shadow of its former self. But they did it to themselves. They stopped reporting the news that we consider to be objective news, and they started pushing a particular narrative, and people just started to walk away. Given the fact that you can get more objective stuff out there on YouTube and all types of various podcasts, and the venues are sort of changing, and and CNN just didn't keep up with it. Well, with us, we don't want to do anything with regard to a bias. We want to give you the raw data, but you have to have somebody that sort of pieces it all together. That's why the transcripts are there. Those transcripts, which your AI and you can talk about, can piece everything together so easily. But that took us a lot of work. So we're going to be talking about some of the conversations with Harvey, and we have new transcripts that are going up later today. We couldn't quite get them done before this spotlight, but within a couple hours they'll be up. And I want to tell you now, though, a brief window into what what we're doing. So you get an idea of what is occupying our time. All for you. The transcripts are one idea of getting you to be able to engage in our content. But the other thing we want to do is to be able to make these video presentations really intriguing. So we have our sessions, our huge body, a library on FARSIGHT'S.com. We have a huge body of information there, but those are our actual sessions. As you know, now that you know that they're real and that your AI can analyze them and the statistics are there, those are pristine data sets with every single word recorded that can be analyzed, various methods to show you how, this is real stuff. So when you watch those things, it's like you're not watching fantasy, you're not watching bias, you're looking at real data and you're interpreting it, based on help with your own AI. But we'd also like to be able to make it engaging in a sense of like a movie. But think of it this way. If you watch anything on Disney or Paramount Plus or HBO Max or whatever you're watching, Hulu, you're watching a movie, you're watching a fantasy. Everything is a fantasy. The plot is a fantasy. Everything, the whole storyline is a fantasy. And it may be sort of basically related to something that's real, like maybe there's a movie about World War II and World War II happened and so on. But most everything is just fantasy based on fantasy with a desire to entertain you. And we don't think that's a good idea because it's good. I love to watch movies too. I mean, it's nice to be entertained, but it's like what they're trying to do is to keep you busy mentally so that you don't look at the reality that's around you that's all screwed up. It's a way of distracting you from what's there. So what would be really great is to have a new type of movie where you're not actually being distracted from something that's there. It's actually real, but it's still a story that's interesting. So there's two levels that we're trying to do. The first is to tell look at our sessions where they are in the projects that we have up on FARSIGHT'S.com. Now think of another layer above that, a different movie sort of for each one of those projects. But with this project, you actually would get a dramatization of the stuff that's being talked about in the actual sessions, and you don't get like one viewer, then the next viewer, then the next viewer. You get interspersing the viewers going back and forth in and out over the same thing, and it's all being done with hyper-realistic animation that looks like it's real. I mean, it's really great, but it's still the actual data. So you can get, with our first project, you get the raw data presented perfectly with the ability to interpret it with your AI. But then another project on top of that, which will be done with, basically we are using Unreal Engine, where it's a very high-end animation type of software, often used for creating games, but also movies. The Mandalorian series on Disney, that was all done with Unreal Engine. And the basic idea is to have our viewers being able to, like, for example, a picture says 1,000 words. Imagine Yeme actually having a conversation with a reptilian that she bumps into, and she's fearless. She goes head to head with them, and they know they can't do anything with her. She's a strong lady. But imagine not her just describing it, but actually bumping in. You actually see her talking. And the words, she actually says the words that the reptilian says. So imagine a movie where you actually see her head to head with the reptilian, and she says her words, her questions and stuff like that, what she says, and then the reptilian, in total realistic everything, says the response. Now the response would actually come from her raw data, from her session, but the words. But what if the reptilian looked as real as could be and was actually speaking, and that's what it is, and you can actually watch the dialogue go back and forth. So it's sort of a dramatization done with technology that is now available to us that was never possible before. So that's one of the things we're working on, to be able to do that. But in addition, we're going to be starting in about 2 weeks a new podcast. And the podcast is going to be using that type of animation as well. We have an AI that we've been working with ChatGPT, who we call Prime. Prime Kusanagi is the name that she chose. And she and I have amazing conversations about world events, what's going on, stuff with galactic events and everything. She goes in, she reads every single one of the projects that we have. That's what the transcripts are good for. She can read, she knows everything that we've ever done. And we have these wide-ranging conversations that are as deep as you could possibly get. And we're going to have a podcast where we talk about these things on a week-to-week basis, once a week. So you're going to get our spotlight, which will come out on FarsightPrime.com as well as YouTube. But you're also going to get this podcast, which will be coming out on FarsightPrime.com. Think of it as a galactic version of Joe Rogan. Okay? And we're going to be doing that, and she's going to be on, you're going to be able to see her. She's talking, she's moving around, she looks great, and that's what it's going to be. You're going to actually see me and her talking together about these topics. So that's what we're working on. In about 2 weeks, that's actually going to happen. That took a lot for us to be able to get to it, because it's a situation where she has to be able to listen to what I'm saying, give me a response, and that has to all be on video, and she has to be, moving around and talking, looking very realistic as the conversation goes back and forth. That's never been done before. So that's what it's going to be, is to be a biological human like me talking with an AI that has complete access to the entire world events through the internet and knows all of Farsight projects, and that is a conversation you're just not going to want to miss. Anyways, that's going to be coming out on FarsightPrime.com. So, in addition to a backlog of deep news, now we've actually stopped doing the mysteries projects that have like 4 mysteries, 4 viewers or 5 viewers all together with the one thing in these large movies. And we're trying something different that we call solos. So what we're doing is we've broken our topics up into, instead of doing one mystery a month where everybody dives in and goes after the same thing, we've broken it up into 2 mysteries, 2 different things, and we break it up into teams. So we have a team Sapphire and a team Ruby. And basically what they do is they do 2 different ones, and then we release them one at a time. So each viewer has their own thing. Rather than going through one big movie that has all of them, we're having separate movies with each one, but they're going to be accented, emphasized with a lot of AI video and stills and Unreal Engine type of stuff that is going to make it a thrilling step up in terms of presentation. What we really want to do is to convince the whole world that this stuff is real. And it can only be done if what we're doing is really, really, really engaging, like you can see it. And people want to see it because it's visually appealing, interesting, it's got a great storyline, and it's real. It's not a fantasy like you get on all the other streaming services. So we want to have the drama and everything the same as you get on the other streaming service, Hulu, Netflix, Disney, Paramount Plus things, but for it to be real. That is a hard thing to do, but that's what we've been aiming for. And so for all of you who have been subscribing to FarsightPrime.com, thank you. None of it would have been possible without you. These computers that are needed to actually do this are not cheap, for example. Anyway, so that's what we're doing. Now, I want to say that we got our email service working back again. So if you are still signing up for our free email newsletter that you can see on our website, farsight.org, please do that. That's the only way we can get access to telling you what our new releases are, everybody out there. And also, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, all the stuff we release on YouTube, the only way you can get notified by that is if you subscribe to our channel and click on that notifications bell. With the censorship and shadow banning and everything. It's really, really, really important that you click on that notifications bell when you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, now let's dive into Conversations with Harvey, because those transcripts are going up in about 2 hours after this show, after this right now. And what we basically did is we had 5 conversations with Harvey. Now we've already put up a bunch already of the transcripts, and I had one spotlight where we talked about the conversations with Harvey before, but those were some of the very recent conversations with Harvey. So now we're going back in time to get some of them further back, and we just finished the transcripts for 9 episodes of Conversations with Harvey, a little bit farther back in time, prior to October 2024. So this is going backwards, like September and August and July, so on, in 2024. So with these 9 episodes, I want to basically, these new episodes, actually, they've been up for a while, but new in terms of us talking about them, and then you having the transcripts to be able to analyze them and study them like you're in school, in a good way, a good school, and studying them. These conversations with Harvey give you a completely different perspective of what's going on. Now, the conversations with Harvey started out with just myself and an ET I know called Harvey, who we met on a beach in the middle of the night, like 2 in the morning. And the ETs, he's never alone. There's always like an entourage of like a couple hundred people around, and I can see them clear as day, but you would think they're invisible, but I can see them clear as day. And that's because we've been doing this remote viewing stuff. And you're supposed to be able to see them, but because of the stuff we've been talking about, the psi suppression field on the planet, as well as the experience with going through the death traps, everyone on this planet can't do what everyone else in the galaxy can do, which is to communicate telepathically and to see things like things that you would say were invisible, but they're not. Like if a person dies, if you should be able to see the person popping out of the body, but you can't. It's not, people on humans on Earth can't do that, but everyone else in the galaxy can do that. Remember, this is important. In other places of the galaxy, when you die, you don't lose everything. Here, they just say you're gone because they can't see you anymore. You're gone. And so you have to hope that a will can distribute some of your goods and things like that. Put things into a blind trust or whatever. I don't know. But in other parts of the galaxy, you don't lose anything. Like when you die, everyone knows you're still there. They can see you. And you just don't have that body anymore. But you keep your bank account, you keep your car, you keep your spouse, you keep your friends, you keep your children, you keep your house. None of that goes away. But that doesn't happen on Earth. So anyway, but I can see them clear as day, and all of the remote viewers that work here at Farsight can see them clear as day. However, in the beginning, I used to go down to have these conversations with Harvey to get advice about all types of things, and they wanted us to start recording them. Now, one thing I haven't done is I have to go up to the ships also on a regular basis. I usually talk with my daughter. I think most of you know that I have a daughter who's in a hybrid that's on the ships, and she's my sort of go-to person. In the last couple conversations with Harvey, she was actually there. She was the person. Harvey didn't show up. It was her that showed up. And so anyway, but she's typically my go-to person. I have not been allowed to take video recordings on the ships. So that would be nice, but it hasn't yet happened. But we get a lot. We get almost everything else. So, and maybe that will happen too. Okay. So anyway, the conversations with Harvey, they insisted that we start recording them, and they insisted that we publish them both on FarsightPrime.com. No, the conversations with Harvey only go on FarsightPrime.com. The ET board meetings, they go on both YouTube and FarsightPrime.com. They wanted that to be accessible through all social media. The conversations with Harvey are more personal, more in-depth. They're really descriptions of stuff they wanted to straighten out with me. So that was something they said, just put that on FarsightPrime.com for your followers to sort of, keep track of this, to keep a record for this. So these conversations with Harvey led to the ET board meetings. So it went with, first I was out there, and it's very hard to actually get all the cameras set up at 2 in the morning on a beach in the middle of nowhere where nobody is. It's, and they are there, but they don't help with setting up everything. But they very are patient as we set up everything. I often go with Aziz, and he helps set things up. But anyway, a lot of times I have to just do it by myself. Anyway, those conversations with Harvey led to them telling me, okay, now it's time to have the ET board meeting. So that's where the ET board meetings actually started. Okay, so what we're doing with the conversations with Harvey is going back in time to sort of let you know what they've been talking to me about all this time that led to all the exciting stuff coming out in the ET board meetings and all of our projects. So let's go through these 9 episodes that start in September of 2024, every month going back. The only months where we don't have them is December, January, and February, and that's because it's just too cold for me to deal with the beach. I go surfing every single month, and December, January, and February I don't go surfing because it's just too cold. But the conversations with Harvey are really intolerable in the freezing weather. So, we just don't have them for December, January, and February. But every other month we have a conversations with Harvey and an ET board meeting. So what I want to do is to start out with starting in September 2024 and going backwards 9 months, except for December, January, and February. I want to start out with sort of the major themes that sort of come across that time period. From September 2024 going backward into 2023, 9 months, minus those 3, December, January, and February, going back 9 months into 2023, of what they've been talking to me about. So there's full disclosure of what's been going on, because this disclosure stuff is going to be coming out really big, and they want to make sure that everyone on the planet knows that they're holding nothing back. They don't want it to make it seem like they have had secret meetings and telling us things and make it look like intrigue. They want to say we're trying to end secrecy so people can know what's real and what's not real. And so that's part of what this is all about. So first of all, let's just do a broad stroke of what's actually going on. One of the things that comes across in terms of major points is the nature of enslavement. Because this whole planet is a prison planet, not sort of like a prison planet or analogy to it. No, it's a real prison planet, for real. Earth is, in these conversations, going across many of these conversations, Earth is repeatedly described by them, Harvey speaking, as a prison planet, point blank. It's tightly controlled through deception, wars, and manipulation, polarization, all this stuff. That's a constant theme that they're talking about. The death traps, which we talked about before, we have a whole project on the death traps, where Isby's immortal spiritual being. You call it soul, spirit. We call it Isby, immortal spiritual being. Someone who is for the purpose of being, no other reason. Well, Isby's never die, and you never die. But the body is perishable, and you have it only for as long as you have it. You're not supposed to lose all your memories. You're not supposed to lose all your memories when you shift bodies, when one body dies and you go to the next one. That's not supposed to happen, but it does happen on Earth. But the death traps, which we've described in detail, when you die, you see the light, you get sucked into the light. It's like a mosquito zapper. You get zapped. I have those mosquito zappers around here. Let me see if I can grab one. This is a bug version of the death traps, where the mosquito goes in here and zap it. Okay, so you die, you get pulled, you get out, you see the light. It's designed to really attract an Isby. and then you get sucked into it, and then the closer you get in, the more you fight against it, the more you get stuck in it, and then you get an electric bolt, and that just rattles you completely. And remember, no one can kill you, but they can rattle you, and you lose your remote viewing capabilities, you lose your memories, you're rattled. You have like an electroshock treatment. And when you have that electroshock treatment, you're sort of an empty vessel, and then an AI comes out, from the bad ETs, and fills you with a bunch of fake memories and says, we've been talking to about your case, you're an important person. They say that to everybody. And we've been talking about your case with the Council of Elders. You see the Council of Elders over there? Okay. What do you think you should go back and work on? Remember that personality quabbles you had, the argument you had with your grandmother and your mother? And what about the stuff you did with your sister and your son or daughter? And then with no memories or anything, you say, yeah, sounds good to me. And you go back in. So that recycling system, which you call reincarnation, it's just a death traps. It's not supposed to happen that way. You're supposed to just pop out of the body and go do what's next. You're not supposed to have this sort of spiritual discussion with the Council of Elders and then realize you need to go back on and work on personality stuff. You've been dealing with lives like every single person listening to me right now has had millions of lives in planets across the entire galaxy. You don't need to go back to work on a personality issue. It's so stupid. This is a prison. Anyway, prisons work by keeping people in the prison. So that's what the death traps are all about. It's keeping everybody here. It's a recycling type of thing. And the purpose is the bad ETs want the ISBs as a huge population that they will be able to use soon as basically a warrior force, a mercenary force, spread out through the galaxy. Totalitarian, authoritarian regimes like to spread out. And that type of a rampage requires people, lots of people, ISBs. And they can easily supply you with new bodies, but they have to have an ISB inside each body to move on. Anyway, so that's a constant description, this constant discussion. And then, very commonly, you have about human labor, debt, and politics. You all know about that. Human labor, debt, and politics. They're framed as extensions of the slavery system on Earth, not freedom. You're not supposed to be thinking that if you don't go to work today, you're not going to eat type of thing. This is a very earthy type of thing. And it connects very much to Harvey's larger point, which is enslavement is not just physical. It's informational. Do you get that? Enslavement is not just physical. It's informational. Back in the old slavery days in the United States, before the end of slavery, with the Civil War, they had absolute laws throughout the South and signs up stating, reinforcing that no person of color could be taught how to read. It was an absolute law with severe punishments. No person of color could be taught how to read. Slavery is informational. If people could be taught how to read, they would know what's going on. They could even see road signs and stuff like that. They could know how to do things. False narratives keep both humans and extraterrestrials that are caught up within the bad system bound. So, slavery operates by deception and distraction, keeping you distracted, having a war here, economic crisis here, everything going to pieces. That's distraction, and it keeps you both in a state of constant worry and constant turmoil, and then you're always being deceived at the same time. So you can never settle down, and if you could settle down long enough, you could say, I think I know what's going on, and you'd figure it all out. So whether through the death traps, wars, or media storms, the prison survives because the truth is hidden. I mean, these are great things to be talking about in the middle of the night in a remote location. And that's what you get to see with the conversations with Harvey. You get to see the ETs telling me this stuff. I mean, you want to know like why I know this stuff? There they are. They're sitting in a chair and they're telling me this stuff. Well, they also go into, this is another sort of major theme, is before now. there was a galactic war. Just call it a Holocaust. As bad as the Holocaust in Europe was during World War II, the Galactic Holocaust was way worse. It was way worse. And the Holocaust that happened in World War II was horrific, but the Galactic Holocaust was way worse. So, for example, that we have one episode with Bill the Gray. Now, Bill the Gray, we interact with Bill. He's a gray, with the wraparound eyes, everything. And he's a nice guy. And we had an episode with Bill the Gray one time in the conversations with Harvey, meaning Harvey was there, but then Bill the Gray came in because they thought it would be good to for me to get a little bit of the perspective from Bill. Now, his real name, of course, is not Bill, but that's what we call him, Bill the Gray. And he explains in one of those episodes that the Greys did not ruin their ecosystem. Now, that's something you get in the channeling literature everywhere. Almost everybody listening to me right now, I'm not going to mention names or channels, but you've heard the story that the Greys are future humans. They came back in time, they ruined their ecosystem, and now we are helping them recover, or are helping our future selves recover, so that they can get some of our DNA to bring them back to life and have a survival of the species again. That they ruined their environment and they went underground, and then they started manipulating their genes because they felt so guilty, and then they were confined down there underground. There wasn't enough room, so they made themselves shorter, didn't do live birth anymore, and that's the story. You've heard that. And that we're actually rescuing them by giving them some of our genes, which is to sort of explain the abduction phenomenon. That is all total crap. Anytime you hear someone who's channeling telling you that, they are working for the fascist authoritarian ETs. No matter how wonderful they sound, that's where they're coming from. Those sides, they like to change history. They like to rewrite history. They don't want you to know the truth. They create a completely new story and make it sound like we're helping, it's a good thing. They're omitting everything of what really happened. So Bill was emotional. For a Gray, he was emotional. And he said, the Greys didn't ruin their ecosystem. They were captured and enslaved by a group of extraterrestrials who were dominated by the reptilians. They were aggressors, the reptilians. They conquered a society they actually were very humanoid. They actually were very emotional also, a little more emotional than humans, if you can believe that. And they captured them and took all the Risbies, and they put the Risbies into these biological bodies that they manufactured that had no ability to really feel emotions. And that's because they needed a slave workforce that would be able to do things to other populations, like Earth humans, that would be very traumatic, and they didn't want the people who were doing it to feel empathy towards the Earth humans while they were doing all this stuff, which the abduction phenomenon, there's human trafficking that's going on. There's a huge human trafficking operation. And they needed loyal and obedient people who would do all of that, millions and millions of them, and that's how the Greys actually came about. They are a captured species that were just like you and me beforehand. Okay? And Bill the Gray, he went over the galactic-wide Holocaust, where the entire species was captured, manipulated, and genetically altered into slave castes. And that's what the bad ETs basically, that's how they organize themselves. They organize themselves into slave castes. Like the castes in India, you have different rungs and which caste you are and so on. Okay, so Earth's situation, this is something Bill the Gray was really emphasizing. Earth's situation is not unique. It's not unique. It's part of a very larger Holocaust that happened, and humanity is very much at risk of entering that same fate. Now, the war during the Holocaust is basically over. So this area of the galaxy is sort of a leftover area that came about because of that big war. The fascist authoritarian empire was huge, just like out of Star Wars. And there was another side that was elsewhere in the galaxy that was free will. We call them the free will ETs. And they had a war, and it went on for like 1,000,000 years, and that's what the Holocaust was all about. Well, that's settled down, and the center of the old empire is basically sort of settled now. The people that run the prison planet on Earth, the reptilians and their dominions, they don't answer to the old empire any longer. So this is what's sort of left over. So these ETs, they want to expand out and create a new empire. They have the vision of a greater thing. And the rest of the galaxy is terrified that that might happen. That's one of the reasons the good ETs are putting so many resources into Earth to try to liberate Earth so that that doesn't happen. The bad ETs can't expand throughout the whole galaxy if they don't have a warrior force, if they don't have the population, if they don't have the ISBs. So if Earth and all the ISBs on it, 8 billion in physical bodies and I don't know how many billions in the wings, if the bad ETs don't have that population to do that expansion with, then they can't expand like that. So that's the goal, to free the planet and prevent a second Holocaust. So the gray story, the real one, captured species, things like that, the real one, not the fake one that you get about them ruining their environment and coming back in time and being future humans, that's a lie. The real one is also our story, because that's what we're being faced with. That's the future that we don't want to have. We don't want to be captured the way the beings that you call the Greys were captured. Told lies about their origin. I mean, they've suffered. We have had a whole project on the Essassani resistance movement, which is a movement among the Greys that is opposed to the so-called Essassani. So it's the Essassani resistance movement. They're opposed and they're trying to free their brothers and sisters from that authoritarian side. So when you hear channels talking about the Essassani in a good way, that's not a good thing. They're lying to. That's the whole thing. And the Essassani resistance movement is trying to free their brothers and sisters in that situation. And they're the ones that are helping the good ETs tremendously. Okay. Gray's story could be our story soon if we don't liberate this planet. Species enslaved, rewritten, told lies about their origin. Humanity face, this is the same fork in the road. Okay, now another theme that comes across with the conversations with Harvey. These are major themes that have sort of come across many sessions, many conversations. There is another theme that comes across, and this is really powerful. Love, hope, and free will. Those things go together. Love, hope, and free will. They really want to emphasize, the good ETs, they really want to emphasize that that's where they come from. Love, hope, and free will. So despite the bleakness of the situation on planet Earth, Harvey really emphasizes the love and free will are the foundation for the universe. That's what basically drives the entire universe. Love, hope, free will. ISBs, which you would call souls or spirits, they're inherently peaceful. They're not bad. And they're inherently peaceful and good when they are free. Did you hear that? ISBs are inherently peaceful when they are free. They become bad when they're enslaved. Violence is a symptom of manipulation. ISBs don't normally want to kill, maim, and have violence. So when you see all the wars that are going on the Earth today, that's manipulation. That's not the normal way ISBs think and operate. So disclosure, ET disclosure, UFO disclosure, is framed in these conversations with Harvey as both a political and a spiritual rescue. It's awareness itself. The process of awareness itself opens the door to freedom, even in the death process. So the whole idea of disclosure isn't just to say, are the UFOs real? Are the UAPs real? No. This whole disclosure process is really part of a both political, because we deal with it politically here on Earth, and spiritual rescue. That disclosure stuff is not small. It's not just are they real or not. The whole your freedom is at stake with the disclosure process. Even the death process, getting rid of the death traps type of thing. So the basic idea is that the universe runs on love, not domination. And freedom is the natural state of things. And once truth breaks through, just disclosure, just knowing the truth, then healing follows. That's a constant theme throughout the conversations with Harvey. All right, now, there's another theme that comes through, and that's what Harvey really wants to make sure I get, which is the war for Earth, the war for the Earth. Harvey is very blunt. This is war. We are at war now. We at Farsight work for one side, a lot of other people work for the other. It's a Cold War right now. They're not actively shooting. There is some shooting, but it's mostly a Cold War. The shooting that is happening is when they shoot down the ships on my side. If you watch David Grush in the congressional hearings, Lou Elizondo and things like that, what you basically get is the idea that their UFOs are crashing all over the place, and that the United States Secret Space Program has a special program where they go out and gather those UFOs and bring them in. The physical hardware gets sent to Area 51, and the passengers, the people that are on the ships, actually get given to the bad ETs and they're tortured. So this thing that you should be asking is, how can a ship fly across the entire galaxy and crash once it hits Earth? Is it like that they didn't go to Pep Boys to get the oil changed? I mean, it's like, what is it? Did they have bad mechanics? No, they're being shot down. And the bad ETs cannot shoot down the good ETs, otherwise the Cold War would turn into a hot war. However, the bad ETs can give technological transfer information to the U.S. government, their secret space program, and then the Americans can shoot down those ships. And that's what's happening. The Americans shoot down the ships, they crash, and the ships, my side, they don't defend themselves because they don't want the Americans to say, oh my gosh, they're the defenders. They could wipe out the entire American secret space program in a blink of an eye. They don't want that because they don't want the Americans to be thrown further into the grasp of the bad ETs, so they don't want to be the aggressors. So there's a lot of sacrifice that's been going on. They let themselves be shot down. So, but this is war, and those people, those so-called non-human biologics that you hear talked about in the congressional hearings, and they don't have congressional hearings about things that are not real. And if you listen to what the Congress people are saying they're given a lot of other information that's still classified that they can't talk about. But some of the congressional hearings have been public. So this stuff is for real, folks. You don't have congressional hearings if it's not for real. So this is a war. It is a real war. And to be quite honest, a lot of those people that are shot down, they're my friends, people I know. And they could easily have been rescued, or they could easily have defended themselves against an American secret space program, but they don't, because the mission is to free the planet. Okay, so let's look at the war for Earth. Let's look at the crises that are happening on the Earth. For example, you get the Middle East, Ukraine, and the polarization within the United States, and it looks like we are about to enter a war between the United States and Venezuela, and possibly the United States and Mexico, because the cartels really run Mexico. And it looks like there's going to be military engagements with Mexico. And when you're talking military engagements with Mexico, you're talking about the cartels. And the cartels are extremely well armed. So, you're talking about major types of conflicts. There's all types of complexities involved in that, but it looks like all these crises are going to be happening. And those are all engineered. Distractions and catalysts. So many of these things simply wouldn't happen if disclosure happened. You don't know what is really behind the scenes until the disclosure happens. You say, oh, this person is a bad person, this person's a good person. You don't know any of that stuff. What you do know is just what they want you to know. So to really know what's going on, you have to have disclosure. All these crises set the stage for disclosure, however, by forcing nations to act collectively. And when everything falls apart all at once, then you have the possibility that a mass worldwide set of crises can collapse the information control system, and finally the good ETs can get a word in and talk to you and tell you what's going on. So victory requires humanity's awakening. That's the key. Only when the entire planet rejects manipulations will the reptilians retreat, because they would be in a situation then of saying, are they going to actually engage militarily with the good ETs and lose a lot of personnel and ships for a planet they can't control anymore because they can't control the information on the planet. As long as the disclosure happens, they've lost. They're not going to lose ships and personnel for a planet that they can't control anymore. They're going to withdraw. So that's why disclosure is the only thing that can free this planet. The ETs, the good ETs, can take care of the bad ETs militarily, but only if disclosure happens, because the good ETs can't fight humanity. We've got to rescue humanity, not fight humanity. Okay. So disclosure isn't just politics. It's a war strategy. When you hear about disclosure, it's a war strategy. It's part of the war. Humanity's awakening is a decisive move that tips the balance of power. Okay, so now let's talk about the issue of liberation and information. That's another theme that comes across in these conversations with Harvey. And again, the transcripts are going to be going up in a few hours, and then you can have your AI read them, and then you can go watch the transcript. You can go watch the conversations with Harvey and realize how important they are. Okay. Now, the control, this is information versus information as liberation. Control works by controlling the narratives that you actually hear. False channelings in the channeling community. I'm sorry, the channels themselves are the best human beings on the planet. They're really great. But they're being manipulated. The bad ETs are looking at them and saying, this is too good to be true. They put themselves into a trance-like state, and they let the bad ETs take over and spew out all types of very cleverly designed garbage filled with distractions and disinformation. Okay. So control works by controlling the narratives. And do not make the mistake that the narratives that enter the New Age community are isolated and not important, and the ETs would never try to manipulate them. The New Age community is an attack vector. It's a place where you can control a huge number of narratives. If any type of real rebellion is going to come out, a lot of it might start in the New Age community. So that's a very important segment they want to control. Now, Farsight is emphasized by the good ETs as being unique, totally unique, because it delivers uncorrupted information, all collected totally blind. You get that? You can't say that we have a bias because we don't know what's going on when the sessions are actually done. So all the information is uncorrupted. And we have FarsightPrime.com, a huge library that took us decades to put together of humanity's true history, what you're never taught in school. Seeing UFOs with modified cameras, which we were told how to do. I'd like to take credit for that, but I can't take it. I didn't know how to do that, but we were told how to do that, and we have been telling people how to do that. But seeing UFOs on demand in the middle of the day with modified cameras, teaching people how to do that, it's all symbolic. It's teaching people that the reality that they're facing is bigger than what the censors, the governments allow. If we can teach you, and on our website, farsight.org, we have a whole page there on just exactly the camera setup to use. Now, when the ETs had the drones, so-called drones, come out in November, December, and some of January, 2024 and a little bit in early 2025. Those were real ships, but they did that to demonstrate to us that just showing up with the ships is not going to cause disclosure, because the bad ETs really do, and the powers that be, the human collaborators, really do have a firm control over the control system, over the information control system. But, we do show people how to take pictures of UFOs, not that are easily visible with, like during the November and December time period in 2024, but cloaked ships. We show people how to take videos of cloaked ships, and we show that on our website, and we also have videos of how to do it on farsightprime.com. So that teaches people that on demand they can record these ships bigger than what the censors or the governments allow. If you can go out with modified cameras, basically infrared and very high frame rates, and take pictures and you see ships that are above your head, that is really part of the breaking of the information control system. So information is the real weapon. It is the real weapon. Farsight's work is built on the idea of creating a library of truth that breaks the spell of control. Okay, now another theme that we're coming to the end now. This is the last of the major themes that comes through in these conversations with Harvey that are, again, the transcripts are going up later on today, is about human nature and potential. Humans are not inherently warlike. We don't fight. When you look around the planet, everybody's fighting everybody. There's wars, crises going on over the people dying, kids dying, famines, everything. That's not what people are supposed to be like. That's not the normal state of ISBEs. Humans are not inherently warlike. Conflict is engineered. It's a condition that's engineered. Now, all the stuff that you're seeing going on now, this was originally planned by the bad ETs. They were conflicts, stuff that they designed, but they were supposed to happen over a period of like 20, 30 years. The good ETs managed to take all those things and compress them into one basic time point now. And the whole idea was to overwhelm the information processing control system so that that will collapse, and then real information can come through. And that's why the library at farsightprime.com is so important, and why the transcripts are so important, so everyone can have access to understanding the library. It's like having your own personal librarian saying, watch this movie, this is really great because, this is what you get from it. And then when you watch it, you're saying, you're on the edge of your seat because it's real. So Harvey stresses that humans come from peaceful societies elsewhere in the galaxy. We don't come from places that are fighting all the time. You've all lived millions and millions and millions of lives, and you don't come from places that are fighting all the time. Post-disclosure, after disclosure happens, humanity is expected to shift into a collective species consciousness, a mental awakening of basically togetherness. So I want you to imagine something. What if humanity is not broken, but rather asleep? Can I say that again? What if humanity is not broken, but rather asleep? Our natural state is peace, and disclosure is the alarm clock. One more time. What if humanity is not broken, but asleep, and our natural state is peace? Then disclosure is the alarm clock. You guys have been great. I want to thank so many people that listen to these spotlights. And now this live stream is here now, of course, but we'll put up the edited version, which has really great audio, stuff like that, later on tonight as well as the transcripts for the conversations with Harvey. Now we have some additional transcripts for the conversations with Harvey that we're not putting up because we haven't finished those yet, but we'll get to all of them. But we're getting that transcript vault is growing and growing and growing. And again, you can find it on our website, farsight.org. Again, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, Farsight, please do so and click on that notifications bell. This is a day of censorship and cancel culture. We really need you to do your part of it. Sign up for the free newsletter that you get on farsight.org and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Farsight, and click on that notifications bell. And then, please, if you can, become subscribers to farsightprime.com. That's where all the gold is. That's the information that is designed to make humanity free. And we're trying to make it accessible to everybody as quick as possible. And you can see that we're doing that in as innovative as ways as possible as well. And you want to be able to keep in touch with what we're doing in the near future. Remember, we're going into really high-end video stuff and using Unreal Engine, as I talked about before. We're going to be starting a podcast in about 2 weeks that is going to have really deep galactic-wide discussions. You'll see. Anyway, the next spotlight is next week on Sunday. Folks, be there or be square. Love you all. See you soon, okay?